Let's get some reaction now on the ANC's 8th eThekwini Regional Conference. We have political commentator Bheki Mngomezulu joining us. A very good morning to you, Mngomezulu, and thank you so much. So they are coming back to continue the conference at 9 o'clock this morning. It adjourned just before dawn with a stalemate after 6-7 hours of deliberation as to is the RTT going to get a vote or not. This would be a deviation from the other 6 conferences where the RTT is not getting a vote. So can we expect there to be some kind of progress this morning from 9 o'clock following a stalemate last night, or are we going to see that particular stalemate and those particular deliberations continuing into Sunday?
Thank you for having me. Let me start off on a very sad note. This is concerning. In fact, what Nhlakani Pontombela is saying is in fact absolutely right. You cannot have what I normally refer to as a KwaZulu-Natal exceptionalism. This is an indictment on the senior leadership of the ANC. They knew that there were going to be regional conferences. They know that there will be provincial conferences. They know there is a policy conference coming, and they know there is an elective conference coming in December. Where were the preparations? Where were the leaders? Those are the kinds of questions that we need to address, because if you have had other regional conferences, then you would assume that such conferences would have set a precedent. Coming to this eThekwini regional conference, you shouldn't be guessing what needs to be done, because you would have done your homework and would know exactly what needs to be done. The issue of the RTT is not just the only problem. You recall that there was initially a question of what to do with the ANC Women's League, given that its time has lapsed. That was resolved. Then there was the issue of the ANC Youth League. Then that was also discussed, and then subsequently there was an agreement reached. We are not supposed to have had that in the first place, because it was known long before the regional conference that the time of the ANC Women's League has lapsed, and it was known that the ANC Youth League is being run by the interim structure. Why didn't you take precautionary measures long in advance? So to answer your question, I foresee more trouble, because we've dealt with 2, they are now in the back. Now we're dealing with RTT. What is next? The problem here is lack of consistency. And in times like this, you need astute leadership to give guidance to the processes. And at the moment, that is not forthcoming.
You are saying that they should have been a lot more prepared for this elective conference, because it's not the first one. You're saying that there seems to be a lack of leadership in terms of preparation, that why are they going into an elective conference somewhat guessing and not being sure of what it is they're supposed to be doing? But then what if, I put to you, what if then, Bheki, they were prepared? What if they did have all of their ducks in a row, and that this is probably just an act of disruption, that, you know, this is an eThekwini elective conference in the year of a national conference at the end of the year? What if this is just another act of disruption and trying to, per se, throw the cat amongst the pigeons?
Not at all, not at all. In fact, that would be a wrong assumption, because it will create the impression that eThekwini region is deviating from the norm. It's not eThekwini region that is deviating from the norm. Remember that KwaZulu-Natal is the biggest province of the ANC, and eThekwini region is the biggest region of the ANC. So there are a number of people who have vested interest in what happens in eThekwini, and who have vested interest on the outcome of this election. So let us not just simplify it to this issue being just a regional conference of the ANC. There are many people outside KwaZulu-Natal who are members and leaders of the ANC, from the National Working Committee, National Executive Committee, who have vested interest in what happens here. That is why these things are happening. For instance, you just had a provincial conference in Mpumalanga, and then you knew that you had the now treasurer of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, in Mpumalanga, who was implicated in cases and was on a step aside. That was, in fact, dealt with in a particular manner. But now we are in KwaZulu-Natal. The issue of Zandile Gumede is treated as if it's something totally new, when in fact the ANC knew all along. There are people who are affected by the step-aside rule, and then there is a regional conference coming, or a provincial conference in the case of Mpumalanga. Then ordinarily, you are supposed to have put mechanisms in place to address this issue even before the conference comes. The question that Nhlakani Pontombela is asking is a very valid one. You have a quota that is supposed to come from each branch depending on the size of the branch. And you know how many delegates are supposed to come from there. If you then, in addition, have an RTT member coming from that particular structure, then how do you account for that person? What is the constituency of that RTT member? So those are the things that we're supposed to have looked at. It's not just a matter of this being another disruption. It's lack of planning and lack of leadership.